Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. Now, what we're talking about today is a little bit different than how we usually talk about these cases, because today's case, without a doubt, is horrific. And while all of the cases that we discuss are, of course, distressing, this one particularly is just extremely heart-wrenching, because today we're talking about the death of Malinda Hoagland, and some of you might actually be familiar with her story. Some of you may not. But regardless, this is a case that definitely needs to be talked about. Now, in addition to just talking about this case, I've also been in contact with members of Malinda's family, and I really just feel like I want to help them bring awareness to Malinda's story. That's their goal, and hopefully we can help make a change. And the goal, of course, always is preventing this from happening again. Because that's really the thing about this case, is it didn't have to happen. This tragedy would have been entirely avoidable if proper precautions had been put in place. The system that was supposed to help protect Malinda just completely failed her. There's a lot to go over, guys, and I'm going to tell you what the family has shared with me. We're going to go through some audio, and we've got a lot to get into, so let's jump right in. Malinda Jean Hoagland was born on July 4th, 2011 in Pennsylvania. Her parents were Rondalyn Smith and Rendell Hoagland. Now, before meeting Rondalyn, Rendell had been married and he also had 3 daughters from that previous marriage, named Emily, Abby, and Jamie. He ended up getting divorced in 2006 and eventually met Rondalyn, and they then had little Malinda. So Malinda had 3 older half-sisters from Rendell's previous relationship, and now according to her sisters, Malinda grew up just truly loving life. And this is a direct quote from them. They say, "She spent her summers catching caterpillars and then watching them turn into butterflies. She loved catching fireflies at night too and then releasing them. She would be so happy when she finally caught the one that she was chasing across the yard. Summer was her favorite time of year, even up until the age of 12. She just loved the sun, loved swimming, but she loved winter too. She loved snowball fights. She always wanted to make a snowman every year. She was just a bubbly child and very outdoorsy." So you can hear directly from her sisters, Malinda was a happy, social child who always made friends easily. She was just extremely social and loved being around people. And she was just the type of kid who was really, happy to be alive. She woke up each morning with a smile on her face. And whenever Malinda wasn't outside, she really loved watching movies. And her favorite movie of all time was The Gremlins. Now, if you ever asked Malinda what she wanted to eat, she would say one of 3 things: pizza, McDonald's, a Happy Meal specifically, or ice cream. Malinda was also an extremely successful student. All of her teachers remember her as being just very outgoing and truly a star student. She never got in trouble. She constantly maintained above average grades, and she was just, great, just so great. She was even known to write thank you notes to various staff members at the school. She'd also go out of her way to thank the cafeteria staff for giving her food and for always just being nice to her. She was truly just a great kid, and there's no other way to put it, and that's why I wanted to give so much backstory about her, because I just really want to illustrate who she was. A happy kid, a good kid, a kind kid to all of her friends and to others and to her elders. What more could you ask for? Now, because they were half-siblings and had another mother, Malinda's older sisters spent the majority of their time with their biological mother. However, they would stay with their father, with Malinda, and with Malinda's mother over the weekends. And her sisters remember their father being just a very traditional disciplinarian. He was strict, but not in a way that was ever concerning, just how a lot of dads are. Now, ultimately, when Malinda was just 8 years old, in 2019, her parents ended up separating. Because of that, they split custody of Malinda, with her father having primary custody. She would stay with him during the week, and then she would spend 3 weekends out of the month with her mother. And over the summer, they would split custody 50-50 and alternate weeks and just kind of go through that pattern. Now, the custody agreement didn't place any restrictions on communication between Malinda and her parents. Malinda was free to communicate with both parents as she wished, whether it be through a phone call, through text messaging, whatever medium it was. So while Malinda would go back and forth between her parents for quite some time, her medium of choice was through a notebook. She would carry this notebook back and forth between each parent's house. And in that notebook, they would write notes to each other just about various things. That's how the two maintained communication with one another. And it isn't clear right now why they chose to do this instead of just talking to one another on the phone. It kind of gives me a throwback to middle school. Me and my friends, we would always have a notebook and we would write notes in class and then just kind of like pass the notebook back and forth. But that's also because I grew up pre-text messaging era. So for whatever reason, this was what they did. They did their notes with this notebook back and forth. Now, in a custody agreement from the summer of 2020, there was one very important detail that was laid out. And it was that Malinda was not allowed to be left alone with Rendell's new girlfriend, Cindy. Specifically, she wasn't allowed to be left alone for more than 1 hour. And you might be wondering, of course, like, well, why? Why was this specifically brought into this custody agreement? And why just 1 hour? Well, apparently it's because Cindy had a very checkered history of harming children. In 2009, for example, she was sentenced to 3 to 7 years in prison after she pled guilty to endangering the welfare of her own young son. Now, years before meeting Rendell, Cindy was married to a man named McKinley Warren. And in the early 2000s, Cindy and McKinley lived in Pennsylvania as well. And they didn't have the best reputation with their neighbors. I mean, they were often loud, they were drunk, they prompted neighbors to frequently call the police because of their behavior. But then whenever the cops would arrive, they would kind of quiet down. They would start to just act as though things were okay. But Cindy would apparently become angrier. She would get louder and she would get more out of control, all until the police would have to just take her away. And Cindy and McKinley ended up having multiple children. And one of these instances where it all kind of came to a head was in January of 2007, because one of their neighbors became very concerned because they hadn't seen one of the youngest children, Isaiah, in quite some time. The neighbor had seen Isaiah with some suspicious bruising in the past, and knowing how aggressive the couple was, they were worried that maybe something had happened to him. So this neighbor called the police, and they expressed their concerns, and the police came to the home to conduct a welfare check on Isaiah. Now, the couple wasn't home, but Isaiah's older brother, his 10-year-old brother, wasn't home. And this 10-year-old brought the police to Isaiah, who, by the way, was only around 4 years old at the time. And they were absolutely shocked to see the condition that Isaiah was in. He was completely covered in bruises, and they said he looked like, and I'm saying this as a quote, not just me, a prize fighter who had been through a title bout. Now, a bout is a round within boxing, or I can't remember if it's the round within boxing or if it's the actual boxing fight. I think it is. So they're saying he looked like a prize fighter who just went through a title boxing match, 4 years old, and also just horrifying. So Isaiah was immediately taken away from the couple, as well as the other children who were inside that home. And that night, McKinley, the husband and the father, was taken into police custody and interviewed. And there, he admitted to harming Isaiah. Yet the half-ass bullshit excuse, sorry for my language, but it's true, he said that the reason he hurt him was because Isaiah was having difficulties potty training. He was 4 years old. Of course, kids are going to struggle here and there with potty training. That never, ever warrants laying your hands on them. And that wasn't the end of it. An anonymous tip later came in about this couple as well. And this person said that this little boy was often covered in bruises, locked in the bedroom for days at a time, and that he also didn't even speak because he had been harmed so severely. So the couple ultimately was charged with, of course, hurting their child, little Isaiah, and he was only 4 years old at the time, as I mentioned, yet that wasn't the end of the investigation. You see, in the year 2000, Cindy and McKinley gained custody of McKinley's daughter, Jessica. Jessica was living with her mom at the time, but in 1999, her mom was arrested and placed in jail for endangering the welfare of a child as well. Now, I'm not sure if it was Jessica or another child that was endangered, but nevertheless, Jessica went to go live with her father. And on December 1st, 2000, Cindy and McKinley took Jessica to the hospital. They told the doctors that Jessica had fallen out of this parked car, that she had hit her head on the curb, it caused her to go unconscious, and they needed to get immediate attention. And it was pretty bad. I mean, Jessica was in critical condition. She was life-flighted to Children's Hospital in Pennsylvania. And you would think that with a severe injury like that, and in a moment like that, that maybe Cindy and McKinley would follow suit, would go to Philadelphia, where she was life-flighted to, so that they could be with their daughter. They didn't. They didn't go. They just went home. They just ignored her and let her get life-flighted on her own to the hospital after this injury. However, as I'm sure you can imagine, Because of this, the entire situation just seemed suspicious, not only because of their reaction, but more so because Jessica had bruises on her. She also had some other injuries. So the medical professionals alerted the police, and then later that same day, on December 1st, a police officer went to their family home. And when he got there, he was shocked to find that this couple did not seem worried at all. They were acting just completely normal, getting ready for bed, as if nothing ever happened, as if their child wasn't miles away at a hospital while doctors were trying to save her life. And unfortunately, Jessica died the very next day. So the same officer who had visited the couple just the day before went back to their house, but this time to give them the news. And once again, this couple showed little to no emotion, this after being told that their daughter was dead. And this is the worst part of all of it, because I haven't even said, not that it could get any worse, but I haven't even said this detail, but Jessica was only 2 years old. 2 years old. And fell out of a parked car, hit her head, gets life flighted. Her parents don't go with her. It makes me sick. It makes me so enraged. A little 2-year-old being alone in a hospital, trying to have her life be saved, your parents not coming, then you die in the hospital alone, without your parents, without anyone who is there for you, and then when they deliver that news, nobody cares. It's so appalling and just, I don't even know the word. Unacceptable? I honestly don't know. I really don't. So because of this, an investigation into Jessica's death was of course opened, and the rest of the children that lived with this couple were placed into foster care. Because at this point, the investigators were sure that Cindy and McKinley, they did something to cause Jessica's death. And as it turns out, an autopsy of her body showed injuries to her head that, in fact, suggested she had been thrown against something. And Jessica was in relatively good health before she went to go live with them. So it seemed like they must have done something to make her look the way she did. I mean, the way that she looked when she was brought to the hospital. And remember, like Isaiah, Jessica, too, had numerous bruises all over her body. So the investigation into Jessica's death actually went on for a few years. And during that time, Cindy and McKinley lost custody of all of their children, which, thank God, but according to the police, it didn't even seem to bother them in the slightest. However, ultimately, the investigators just couldn't find enough evidence to prove that the couple caused Jessica's death. So eventually, Cindy and McKinley were able to regain custody of all of their children, and they just went on with their life as normal as possible, like nothing ever happened. So now, fast forward 7 years to 2007, when their son Isaiah was found covered in bruises. It prompted the police to again start questioning what was going on here, what was the couple doing, and what happened to Jessica back in 2000. There were just too many similarities between the injuries that Isaiah had and the injuries that Jessica had. So eventually, Cindy confessed to what happened to Jessica. She said that she was at home alone with Jessica, who needed to get her diaper changed. But Cindy said she was too busy. She had just painted her nails. They were still wet. She didn't want to ruin them. McKinley was out at a bar with some buddies at the time drinking. So Cindy called him and said, "Hey, can you come home to change Jessica?" Which that doesn't even make any sense either, right? I mean, your nails are going to dry in 10 minutes? You can't wait 10 minutes to change a diaper, which you should just change the diaper and then redo your nails. But you're going to call him to come home to change the diaper? It seems to me more like she just didn't want anything to do with Jessica, right? She had no intention, in my opinion, wet nails or not, of ever changing her. But regardless, he eventually came home. And we don't know the details, but allegedly McKinley did something to Jessica, causing her to die the following day. And basically, it seemed like he beat her to death. So McKinley was not only charged with harming Isaiah, but he was also charged with causing Jessica's death in 2000. McKinley eventually pled guilty to Jessica's death, and he's currently serving a maximum sentence of 50 years. However, and this is absolutely enraging, but because Cindy ended up testifying against McKinley, she wasn't charged with anything related to Jessica's death. But in January of 2009, she pled guilty to endangering the welfare of her son, Isaiah. During this, Cindy's friends and brother asked the judge to be lenient with her sentencing because, according to them, they said Cindy was a kind, loving mother, a fun mother. They claimed that Cindy was also being abused by McKinley and that the police had done nothing to help her get out of the situation, that she was just a victim as well. And one friend even said, she kept calling the authorities, who did nothing, until finally it took an outsider calling for them to do anything. Just being away from her husband is a good thing for her. But for her to now lose her freedom, it's unfair. She doesn't deserve this. But the officer who investigated both Jessica's death and Isaiah's situation said, to say she did all that she could do to get the authorities involved is erroneous. At any time, she could have identified her husband as the one who caused her stepdaughter's death and also abused her son. But she refused to do so. Instead, she lied with her husband about how Jessica got hurt, and she left it to a neighbor to report Isaiah's abuse as well. The investigator was just sure that Cindy had more of a hand in both situations and was likely just as guilty as McKinley was. But they couldn't prove it. So in the end, like I said earlier when I first introduced Cindy as Rendell's new girlfriend, she was only sentenced to 3 to 7 years in prison. So now going back to Malinda, as you can see, there was a good reason why Malinda should not have been allowed to be alone with Cindy, especially more than for 1 hour or period for that matter. And actually, when Rendell started dating Cindy in 2019, his older daughters, Malinda's half-sisters, also didn't have a great feeling about her. One daughter, Jamie, used to live with Malinda and Rendell, but whenever Cindy came into the picture, she wasn't allowed to live with them anymore. And then communication between Rendell and all of his older daughters just slowly started becoming cut off. At one point, Rendell's oldest daughter, Emily, told him that she knew all about Cindy's past. And she called her father, kind of saying something along the lines of, hey, Dad, do you even know what this woman has been accused of? Do you know what she has done? But Rendell basically just brushed her off and said, you know what? It's not a topic that we are going to be discussing. So Emily just held on to the hope that Cindy had maybe changed and that Malinda wasn't in any real trouble. Then in 2023, Cindy, Rendell, Malinda, and Cindy's youngest son, Gavin, moved away from Monroe County. They moved to an area called West Kane Township in Chester County, Pennsylvania. So after this move, Malinda's sisters became increasingly concerned because not only were they essentially cut off from seeing her, but also cut off from communicating with her. The last time anyone really even saw her was when they went over to visit them after some sort of competition that Rendell had entered. The competition was in another town, so Rendell, Cindy, and Malinda were staying at a hotel during that time. Jamie went to the actual competition, but Malinda wasn't there. Then later, Jamie went to the hotel that they were staying at and brought them all food, hoping that she would actually see Malinda. Malinda was inside the hotel room, but the room itself was extremely cold, and Malinda was buried inside the bed, just underneath a lot of blankets. Yet, Jamie didn't really think anything of it because other than that, Malinda seemed fine otherwise. Malinda had said that she was okay, that she was making new friends at her new school. But then the conversation was cut short when Rendell and Cindy came back to the hotel, and they got back and told Jamie, you know what, you need to leave because we want to go to bed, the night is over, time to go. And ultimately, that was the last time that any of the sisters ever saw Malinda. After the move, Malinda attended North Brandywine Middle School, and she did do well in school. She was social, she made friends, she was an honors student. However, as time went on, Malinda started to be absent from school a lot. And in total, she accumulated 35 absences in the school year. 10 of them were excused, while 25 of them were unexcused absences. And then eventually, by late November, early December of 2023, Malinda was pulled out of school entirely. She was placed in this online charter school. And we know that this is never a good sign, right? If a child is being absent from school time and time again and then ultimately just gets removed from the school, it's for a reason. It's because somebody doesn't want them either speaking to somebody at school seeing something on them, there's something else happening. I mean, they're isolating them more and more. And at that point, hardly anyone saw Malinda. And by January 2024, just a couple months after she was moved into this online school, her dad stopped posting pictures of her on Facebook altogether. Yet he continued posting pictures of himself, Cindy, her son Gavin. He would even post pictures of himself and Gavin going to the movies or attending one of Gavin's Boy Scout events. But Malinda was never in those photos. And if Rendell was going places with Gavin, it might make you wonder, okay, well, where were Malinda and Cindy then? The last pictures that Rendell ever posted of her were from Christmas 2023. And in the pictures, Malinda's appearance was very concerning. She looked very thin, very tired. It was just such a stark contrast to the pictures that had been posted of her before. And in a few of these pictures, you could even see what looked to be bruises on her hands. But still, during all of this, Malinda seemed fine for the most part, because whenever she attended her online school, she always had her camera on, she was always smiling, she would actively participate in the class. She still maintained excellent grades. She often worked ahead of her schoolwork. She even received Student of the Month in March of 2024. And in late April, she was placed in all honors classes. She was just such a bright girl. Then on May 3rd, she was seen again on camera and seemed to be doing okay at the time. However, just one day later, on May 4th, 2024, Rendell called 911 and said that his daughter was unconscious. Police arrived at their home around 7:28 p.m., and when they saw that Malinda was unresponsive, they immediately brought her to the hospital. And about 2 hours later, at 9:58 p.m., Malinda was pronounced dead. Rendell said that Malinda had run into another kid on the water slide and that she had also hit a tree while she was riding her bike. But that didn't explain all of the other injuries that the doctors and the nurses found on Malinda. When she came into the hospital, Malinda weighed only 50 pounds. She did not have any fat on her body. And just for reference, the Center for Disease Control says that an average 12-year-old should weigh between 68 and 135 pounds. Malinda weighed 50 pounds. That is how much my 5-year-old weighs. There was no doubt that Malinda was emaciated. And get this, the last time that she saw a doctor was 3 years earlier in November of 2021, and at that time, she weighed 77 pounds. So tell me how over the course of 2.5 to 3 years, as she's growing, as she's getting older and getting taller and going through growth spurts, how does she lose 27 pounds? That makes no sense. And when the nurses asked Rendell and Cindy why Malinda was so thin, they just said that she had steadily been losing weight over the past few months. They said that they were planning on taking her to a doctor, yet they just hadn't gotten around to it yet. And on top of that, Malinda had damage to almost every organ in her body. She had 6 broken bones, she had ulcers, numerous lacerations, and upwards of 75 bruises and pressure sores on her body. Malinda was described as broken and barely alive when she was brought to the hospital. Her arms and legs were what they quote as saying deformed. And it was obvious that this wasn't because of some bicycle accident. I mean, something way more sinister had been happening here. So the hospital notified the police about what happened, and they immediately launched an investigation into Cindy and Rendell. And what they found was absolutely horrifying. They searched their home on May 5th and 6th, and they also seized a variety of items, including a ring camera, multiple laptops, multiple pairs of handcuffs, leg shackles, phones, tablets, locks and keys, lighters, multiple pieces of clothing, notebooks, and various other cameras. And what they found on these cameras and in Rendell and Cindy's cell phones was absolutely disgusting. Investigators discovered that since around 2021, for years now, Malinda had been subjected to intense harm and very intense torture, all at the hands of her father and his girlfriend. Investigators found that Malinda was often relegated to the basement of the home. She was forced to sleep on the floor without any type of cushioning or blankets. They withheld food from her. She was forced to do strenuous exercises, even without having food, for days at a time at that point. And Rendell and Cindy had cameras in the home, and they had these cameras so that they could keep a constant watch over Malinda. These cameras also had microphones in them so that they could speak to Malinda whenever they wanted to through this camera. And they can be heard on these recordings, guys, berating Malinda for just the slightest things, like forgetting to do chores, forgetting to do her homework, not smiling while her camera was on during school, not sitting properly, having accidents because she wasn't allowed to use the bathroom, for stealing food. I mean, you name it, they just tormented this poor girl. Police even discovered that they had put a padlock on the pantry just so that there was zero chance of Malinda having access to food. Rendell and Cindy would also take videos and pictures of this torture on their cell phones. They often would send these videos back and forth to one another, almost to like showcase what they were doing or to brag or gloat or be like, look what I did with her today, or look how she's responding. I mean, it is sick. And in one video from December of 2022, Cindy accuses Malinda of lying and hurting her feelings. So as a punishment, Cindy made Malinda hold a stack of books over her head for 25 minutes. But as a 50-pound 12-year-old would do, just 15 minutes in, Malinda drops these books to the floor. So then Cindy hits her in the head with a metal spatula. She then made her pick up these books all over again and start over. She also said that she was going to be beaten all night. So while Malinda was holding these books over her head, Cindy just would continually verbally berate her, telling her she's going to have to eat hot sauce for dinner, telling her that she was, worthless. Cindy even sent Rendell a text during this incident and said, quote, "Beat her as soon as you come in. Throw her in the shower and we'll put more books on top of her." And the day after this incident, Malinda missed school for, quote, "unknown reasons." Remember all of those unexcused absences? In multiple videos, Malinda's hands were cuffed and her legs were shackled. She was often shackled to various pieces of furniture too, for example, like an air hockey table in the basement. As I said, she would be forced to do these strenuous exercises even when she was shackled. She would have to walk in place, she would have to do squats. She was also forced to hold what they called stress positions, like a squat, for very long periods of time. Authorities even discovered that while Malinda was attending online school, her feet were still shackled. She was chained to the furniture. The shackles and the chains were just placed in a way that they couldn't be seen on camera. We've seen so much of that since the pandemic, right? Where people are wearing, a suit and tie up top and pajama pants on the bottom because nobody can tell the difference. That's kind of the same thing here, but in a much darker and disturbing way, where she's being seen on camera from the top up, but from the waist down, she is shackled and handcuffed to furniture. And while they were doing all of this, Cindy and Rendell would just verbally yell at her, berate her, and in one video, Cindy can even be heard saying, "Keep moving, and don't look for breakfast or lunch tomorrow, because you're not getting it, and you won't get dinner either, because I'm not getting up." Investigators discovered that the very first conversation between Rendell and Cindy about harming and injuring Malinda started all the way back in 2021. And from June to September of 2022, Malinda was repeatedly not given food, water. She was constantly forced to hold those stress positions. And then in February and March of 2023, Malinda missed almost a month of school because she had been injured so badly. Cindy and Rendell couldn't cover up the injuries, so because of that, they just made her stay home so that it would avoid any suspicion. And throughout all of 2021, all the way until 2024, there were multiple messages where they were discussing how they were planning to hide the injuries on Malinda. The first video of her being shackled was from December of 2023, just a few months after they installed cameras inside the home. And in April of 2024, 1 month before she died, they also rubbed soap in Malinda's eyes. And this was so bad that it caused her to have vision impairment. The last recovered photo of Malinda alive was from May 3rd, 2024, a day before she was pronounced dead. And in this photo, Malinda has a bruise on her eye and this mucus-like fluid that is coming out of her nose. Investigators believe that that mucus likely indicated that she had some sort of brain injury. Also, on May 3rd, the family went camping at a nearby park, and I believe that Malinda went with them because a witness did report seeing a girl standing outside, completely in these wet clothes, outside of the tent or outside of whatever they were camping in. Then, through text messages recovered between Cindy and Rendell, they discovered that Malinda had lost consciousness between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. on May 4th. But remember, they didn't even call the police until 7:30 p.m. So around 4 a.m., they drove Malinda home from the park, and there's a video of her slumped in the back seat while Cindy and Rendell try to wake her up. When they got home, instead of trying to tend to her or call a doctor, they instead brought her into the house and shackled her to that air hockey table in the basement. And in one of the videos taken during this time period, Cindy actually refers to Malinda as a bitch. So hours go by with Malinda being unconscious, and they still didn't call 911, they didn't bring her to the hospital, they didn't do anything. And according to them, it's because they thought that Malinda was faking being unconscious. Text messages between the couple show that they even talked about using smelling salts to try and wake her up. Now, before they finally called 911, Cindy told Rendell that he should just run Malinda to the hospital. And she said it so nonchalantly and casually, like it was nothing, almost like, hey, can you go run to the grocery store because I forgot something for dinner? But the good news was they eventually did call 911. But this was hours after Malinda had lost consciousness. And coincidentally, before the police came, guess what they did? They deleted all of the photos, all the text messages, all the videos, everything, the hours and hours worth of content that depicted the harm and, quite honestly, torture that they had inflicted upon Malinda for years, everything that she had had to endure. When the police recovered the videos and the images from their phones, they found over 150 videos and images. These images and videos indicated Malinda being shackled to furniture, enduring physical harm. They found over 200 images and videos of her having to endure forced exercise and other physical punishments. And in many of these videos, Malinda can be heard apologizing over and over and over, just asking them for one more chance. Just give me another chance. I'm so sorry. Which, how heartbreaking is that? This innocent 12-year-old girl who, which if I'm doing my math correctly, this started when she was 9 years old, I would believe, thinks it's her fault. Apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry, just give me another chance. I'm so sorry. Like, just wanting her dad to love her. It feels very reminiscent of the Ruby Franke case, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, but with her children, just apologizing as though they are the ones in the wrong for this. They're not, but that is how brutal this was. They broke her down so badly, physically, emotionally, and broke her spirit that she truly thought it was her fault. So after getting all of this evidence, on May 6th, Rendell and Cindy were both arrested. Thank God.
Good afternoon. Today it's my somber duty to discuss the death of 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland. We are here to announce that we have arrested Malinda's biological father, Rendell Hoagland, and his girlfriend, Cindy Warren, on charges of attempted homicide, aggravated assault of a child, kidnapping, and other related charges. As always in our justice system, these defendants are innocent until proven guilty, and what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be difficult to hear, and I may struggle to get some of the facts about this case out, so I ask that you please bear with me. On Saturday, May 4th, the West County Police Department and the Westwood EMS responded to a 911 call from Rendell Hoagland, who reported that Malinda was unconscious and non-responsive. Shockingly, they found a 12-year-old girl who was broken and barely alive. Our investigation revealed that Rendell Hoagland and Cindy Warren subjected Malinda to evil and torment that no child should ever have to endure, and they did it for months. Based on this and other evidence, we decided to charge the defendants with attempted murder. They were arrested last night. Their bail was set this morning at $1 million cash. We are awaiting a variety of medical-related reviews and reports to be concluded, at which point we will decide whether to charge the defendants with murder of Malinda. These reports can take weeks to obtain, and we'll determine whether those charges are warranted when we have a chance to thoroughly review all the evidence. And because this is an ongoing investigation with respect to those potential charges, I'm not going to be taking any hypothetical questions about murder today. But in the following days and weeks, everyone is going to ask, how could this happen to a 12-year-old in America? I don't have the answers right now, But what I can say immediately is that Malinda seemingly had limited access, incredibly limited access to the outside world from the moment that she was pulled from school. And what I can also say is that on Saturday night, when police and first responders truly encountered Malinda in a state where they could recognize something was wrong, they did everything in their power to save her. And while we wish that the 911 call had happened sooner, it's very clear that everyone rang every alarm in every direction to make sure that she was taken to the best place and that the best investigation could happen in an attempt to make sure that she could be safe if she could be saved. So if there's something to take from this right now, it's that if you have concerns about the safety of a child, even of a child that you hardly know, you should say something. Call 911. Call Childline at 1-800-932-0313. Childline reports can be even anonymous when you file them correctly. And if you think you have information about Malinda's case, please contact the Chester County detectives immediately at 610-344-6866. There's a 9-year-old child in the home that is Cindy Warren's biological child. He appears to have been very well treated and unharmed and is out of her custody currently, obviously.
However, on July 25th, 2024, their charges were upgraded, and the Chester County District Attorney shared even more about what they had found throughout their investigation.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris DeBrena-Sorobe, Chester County District Attorney. It's my unfortunate duty today to come before you and to again discuss the death of 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland. This morning, we upgraded the charges against Rendell Hoagland and Cindy Warren. We charged them with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, kidnapping, and hundreds of related charges. The defendants are currently being held in Chester County Prison. Because of the nature of the charges, bail is not available to them. And although more conversations to have with Malinda's family, and although we have more work to do on the investigation front, I can stand here before you today and say that we intend to pursue the death penalty in this case. And then as we investigated, a preliminary number of cell phone videos clearly showed that Malinda was terrorized by the defendants. And since our last press conference, we've had a forensic pathologist make a number of findings during Malinda's autopsy. Malinda died of starvation and blunt force trauma. She did not have any disease. She did not have something that caused her to lose weight. She was starved and she was forced to exercise to the point that she had, according to the pathologist, no sign of body fat on her. In fact, Malinda had injury to practically every major organ system in her body, including her brain. While medical experts chronicled her injuries, the team of fabulous detectives here went through and parsed through incredible amounts of data. This was data from cell phones, blink camera videos, and other sources. They found over 450 videos of evidentiary value, hundreds of still images of evidentiary value, and text messages of evidentiary value that spanned 2.5 years. The evidence shows that these defendants communicated regularly about how they were going to terrorize Malinda. She was subjected to physical and psychological torture. And as someone who has reviewed just a small fraction of these photos and videos and text messages, I will tell you that it appears that Malinda was reprogrammed to accept abuse as part of her life. She would not report abuse because she was afraid of being beaten even more fiercely than she had been before. The physical punishments spanned a really wide and torturous gamut. On multiple occasions, Malinda was struck in the face so badly that she had to be held home from school because makeup would not cover up her injuries, and makeup was regularly employed in order to cover up lesser injuries. And when Malinda was 11 years old, she suffered from rug burn to her face so severe that could not be covered up by makeup that she had to be held home from school for weeks. On top of that, she was subjected to other types of strange torture. She was chained to furniture. She was forced to run in place. She had been forced to do push-ups for hours on end. She was forced to hold her hands above her head, and on some occasions hold books above her head. The level of exercise that they placed on Malinda must have caused her prolonged pain. And in fact, we believe that in some instances, they caused stress fractures to her body. In one video in particular, Cindy Warren was recording and sharing with Malinda Hoagland, Malinda crying, holding her hands above her head, holding a stack of books. And the psychological torture in this case was real. The inadvertent and side torture was palatable because they didn't just chain her and watch her over responsibly. She was shackled to the basement floor, furniture in the basement floor, and forced to sleep there. And when she woke up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom and no one could unshackle her, she was forced to urinate on herself. And when the defendants found that out, they blamed her for it and they beat her even more. The psychological abuse was real. They belittled her almost daily, it seems. They told a child that they were going to kill her. They forced her to do endless amounts of chores. They forced her to do endless amounts of exercise, all while berating her and calling her an idiot, saying that she was worthless. When in fact, this little resilient girl, while enduring all of this, was excelling at school. Just months before her death, she was placed in honors classes by her cyber school. Another question that we've seen and we want to talk about, because we've been, and I hinted at earlier, is will we charge the death penalty in this case? We are pursuing the death penalty here. I'll talk a little bit about what that process looks like. Every first-degree murder charge, when it is supported by certain factors, is eligible for the death penalty. One of those factors that we are to consider is torture, regardless of the age of the victim, whether they were tortured before or as part of their killing. And that is the primary factor, although we are researching others that involve in this case. The next step legally is for us to file paperwork at the time of arraignment. So that's the next legal proceeding that occurs after a preliminary hearing. And we intend to file that paperwork. But I want to tell everyone, like in every DA's office across this Commonwealth, that determination is not set in stone. Because we have been working on this aspect of the case, the investigation phase, I have not gotten a chance to personally sit down with Malinda's family. They will be consulted as part of the final determination of how we proceed. And we will be looking at other factors that we're required to pursuant to the death penalty statute. In the end, before trial, we will make our final determination as to how we are going to proceed with the death penalty. But I can tell everyone right now, we will be filing that notice at the time of arraignment.
Now, as you can imagine, when all of this came out, many people were asking, how could this have gone unnoticed? Clearly, Malinda had visible injuries on her. Didn't anybody notice? friends, family, teachers at school. How could this go on for so long without anybody noticing anything or anybody saying anything?
Another question that I think we all are asking is, what in the world could we have done to prevent this? It's really difficult for me to be able to say in this case, because on one hand, when you read what we've chronicled in the affidavit of probable cause, you have to feel like we do, that there has to be something that we could have done, that we could have done better for Malinda. But I want to say that part of the reason I'm here and why this is such a critical press conference to me is we're dealing with the unimaginable. And I think it's important for school districts, law enforcement, CYFs across the state and across the country to see what happened here. Because although it doesn't get a ton of press, this does happen on exceedingly rare occasions in different parts of the country. And it's time that we all go back and look at our processes and make sure that we are doing everything we can to help our children, to make sure that they're not being subjected to this. But on the other hand, I want to make something perfectly clear. We are here because there is evil in this world. We all like to, I think, at times forget about that simple fact. And sometimes, no matter what everyone does, no matter how much we try, evil harms innocent people, even innocent children. And so we are here today because of what these defendants did, and for no other real reason. Because we've reviewed scores of school records, we've restored all kinds of records here in this case, and the evidence shows here that teachers, school districts, whether they were cyber school or in school, like in-person school, they cared about Malinda. They checked in with her. She was reprogrammed. And they did the best that they could with the evidence that they had. There is no investigation into any agency for failing to act in this case. This is not a case where abuse was actually reported and no one did anything.
So as you heard from the video, the DA says that all of the agencies did everything that they could. But obviously, a lot of people are questioning whether that's true or not. It was reported that Malinda's school, when she attended school in person, didn't report anything to CPS. Yet there was a report in the fall of 2023. Someone at Malinda's school did call the Pennsylvania Child Hotline and reported that they suspected that Malinda was being harmed. And I have found some sources that say a CPS worker did visit the home. However, some say that CPS employee just called Malinda's father. So I don't know what scenario really truly took place. But nevertheless, Rendell just claimed that Malinda was injured while jumping on a trampoline. And I'm assuming that this report had something to do with how thin Malinda was, because Rendell also claimed that they had caught Malinda eating extra food for breakfast at school. So they were no longer giving her food in the mornings because she was apparently sneaking extra food at breakfast at school, which, that just indicates that this girl is hungry, are you out of your freaking mind? And he further bolstered this theory by saying that Malinda would meet with a counselor to discuss what he called her eating issues. And he said he would talk about it with her doctor at her next appointment. However, that visit with the counselor and the doctor, of course, never happened. And shortly after this report, Malinda was removed from school entirely. The superintendent from the school district released a statement. Take a listen.
After Malinda's death in May, the Coatesville Area School District released a statement saying, "Our staff diligently reported concerns about her welfare to the state agency that receives and manages concerns. Shortly thereafter, she was withdrawn from our schools." The State Department of Human Services said, "Our sincerest thoughts continue to be with Malinda's family and friends, as the death and loss of any child is tragic. The administration cannot comment on pending litigation."
Now, many people have also wondered where Malinda's biological mother was in all of this. Malinda's mom had partial custody of Malinda, and she was legally allowed to see her. So in other words, Malinda's mother had rights to visit her. She had rights, she just didn't exercise them. So the investigators did find cards that Malinda's mom, Rondalyn, wrote to Malinda, and they also found a letter that she wrote to Malinda. The letter is dated from January 10th, 2024, just a couple of months before Malinda died. And in this letter, she wrote, "I send you this letter to express my love to you, and I know you will read this when you find the time. I hope that school is getting better and well for you. I know you will do good in your studies. Please, for me, study hard. I hope to see you soon. I am hoping you enjoyed your Christmas. There are presents here which I am excited to give you. Gavin also has presents here. I love you very much, and I can't wait to see you. With Mommy's love." Investigators also found a letter from her mom to the father, to her ex-husband, and I do want to note that there isn't a date on this letter. But in the letter, she writes, "Dear Mr. Hoagland, here I am reaching out to you again about the health and welfare of our daughter, Malinda, as her best interest is entirely in the expression of my love for her. I am continually reaching to her as in her best interest. I reach to you entirely in Malinda's well-being concerning her behavior and the depth of this knowledge, which presents itself as a troubling observation. The worries of me, Rondalyn Smith. I have met the expectations as were presented before me in the amount which completes a total payment in the fullness which I have given to you, Rendell. Out of the deepest reach of my love for our daughter, Malinda, I sincerely and tenderly would like to reach out and spend time with her, as I am troubled by the distance and lack of personal reach. I, Malinda's mother, would love for nothing more than to see my daughter in a time of togetherness. Please contact me and we will schedule a time and date in which I will be able to spend quality time with her. I am overwhelmed with sadness and a troubled heart as time passes and I have not seen Malinda for a great length of time. I am Malinda's mother, and I truly hope and desire a deeper connection to her, as I am concerned and I am not seeing her more than once a year. I want to be a greater asset, as I tenderly and truthfully am sad as my reaching out to Malinda is my most important topic, which trembles upon this area of my life. Please work with me and schedule a time in which will be available. I have no way to reach Malinda's home. Please talk with me in an availability in which I can connect with our daughter. Sincerely, Rondalyn Smith." Now, obviously, this letter was super formal, and it also, I just got to be honest, does use some pretty strange wording or unfamiliar wording to me, I'll say. But it almost kind of sounds like it was translated badly from another language or maybe something like that. But the general consensus that I gather from that letter is that she wanted to see Malinda. And the investigators then after this found another letter. Now this time, this letter was written by Malinda herself and it was sent to her mom. She says, "Dear Mom, please don't read this out loud and please read how I feel. I have wrote this letter to you because I feel if I tell you how I feel over the phone that I will start to cry and you won't listen to me. But I still wanted to talk to you about how I need you in my life right now. As you know, I have made honor roll in school and since then I have also been student of the week. I have gotten an 80% or higher on every test and quiz that I take, so I have been doing great school-wise, but my emotions are out of hand. I am upset that you did not believe me when I was telling you that I'm embarrassed at school. I also feel very mad at you because you seem to always think that Dad and Cindy are rude people and that they talk bad about you, and that's not true one bit. Cindy is helping me get better at my math and my reading, plus she also makes sure that I am well fed and she is there for me emotionally. Because since we have last talked on the phone, I have been feeling very depressed. Dad has also been there for me by taking very well care of me and making me happy again after I cry for you. I cry over the fact that you will not send body wash or body cream or even some kind of clothing that I can put on. I am 12 years old, soon to be 13 in 4 months. My size is a 10 to 12, and soon I will start my monthly girl thing. I am honestly scared, and I really need you to send a gift card or cash so that I can buy pads when I need them. Please, Mom. I will think about giving you a call on March 18th on Sunday if you will listen to me about how I feel. Once you have read this, please call Dad and tell him that you got the letter. And don't start saying anything rude or mean to Dad or Cindy if she's there, because I feel strongly about how you talk to them. Plus, if you do act rude or mean, then that will tell me that this letter was a waste of my time and that you truly don't care about how I feel. I hope you will listen to Dad and Cindy. With hope and love, Malinda. Important. This letter is about how I feel and about how you can help me in my life right now because I need you, Mom. It also explains how I am thinking about calling only if you listen. Do not read out loud. This is a private letter. Read the whole thing carefully. I'm sorry for the handwriting and spelling. Malinda. So if you're anything like me, you may be thinking that parts of this letter sound very strange and like it wasn't written by a 12-year-old. And you wouldn't be the only one to think that. Like I said, we have talked with Malinda's older sisters, and they stated that they do not think that this letter was truly written by Malinda. Yes, they think that it's her handwriting, but they don't think that those are actually Malinda's words. Not to mention, why was there such an emphasis in that letter about Cindy and her dad, about sending only money, not seeing her, about how she treats them, how she talks to them? No. This does not, it feels like it was much more at the direction of Cindy and Rendell. Also, the note in there where she says, they're keeping me well fed. What 12-year-old says that? Unless you're trying to prove that you are feeding her because you know that you are not, and you're trying to counteract that. Like, to me, it just seems glaringly obvious, right? Now, overall, Malinda's sisters don't know why all of this abuse happened to Malinda. Nobody really does. And like I said, after Cindy came into the picture, they had no contact with Malinda. The sisters do suspect that all of this happened because Malinda was the child of Rendell and the child that he had with another woman. They think that this is just extreme harm, all stemming from Cindy's jealousy, that she targeted Malinda because she was, quote, the black sheep of the family. And I gotta say, it tracks because look at what she did with Jessica in her previous relationship. That wasn't her biological daughter, and she treated her like garbage as well. And we know that Jessica ended up dead as well. Yes, Cindy put all the blame on her ex, but I feel that this should stop and make people think. I mean, 2 girls have shown up dead. 1 boy was found extremely harmed. What's the common denominator here? Cindy.
Ms. Warren, what about Malinda? Prosecutors say you tortured and starved her to death. Is that true?
We caught up with Cindy Warren at an unrelated court hearing just yesterday and tried to ask her about the death of Malinda Hoagland.
Do you want to say anything at all in your defense?
I'm not here for that.
I'm here for it.
I'm glad you are.
Protective measures were in place to keep 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland away from Cindy Warren. This 2020 custody order we obtained spelled it out in black and white. Quote, the minor child shall not be left in the care of Cindy Warren, father's fiancé, for any period of time exceeding 1 hour unless expressly agreed upon by mother and father through written communication. According to police, Malinda was living with Rendell Hoagland, her father, and his girlfriend, Cindy Warren. And according to lawyers for the family, this was in violation of the custody order.
We knew that something had gone terribly wrong.
Alexandria Crothamel and Tom Bosworth are attorneys representing Malinda's estate, as well as Malinda's 3 older half-sisters.
Monroe County was already cued in to the fact that she was living with Malinda and that she had this history.
This history, attorney Tom Bosworth is referring to Cindy Warren's guilty plea all the way back in 2007 for felony child endangerment for the abuse of her 3-year-old child in Monroe County. Dressed in black, this is Warren leaving court in 2007. She was sentenced to 3 to 7 years in jail for endangering the 3-year-old. At the time in 2007, Warren was married to a man named McKinley Warren. He was charged in a completely separate cold case from the year 2000, where prosecutors say he beat his 2-year-old daughter, Jessica Bach, to death. McKinley Warren pleaded guilty and was given 50 years in prison. Only weeks ago, the district attorney in Monroe County took to Facebook saying the courts had removed children from Cindy Warren's custody following the death of 2-year-old Jessica Bach, a death she was not charged in connection with. Mike Mancuso spoke with me over Zoom about similarities with the case in Chester County and how in his post he wrote, Cindy Warren had an ability to hide her conduct from social workers back then. Chester County investigators said Warren and Hoagland secluded Malinda from mandated reporters and others who would have been able to help.
Now, obviously, Cindy isn't the only person to blame here, because evidence also shows that Malinda's father, Rendell, had a hand in all of this as well. And let's pretend that Rendell never laid a hand on Malinda. We could just pretend that for a second. He still would be responsible because he just stood around and did nothing. Malinda's sisters are very confused as to why their dad would have done this. And as I said earlier, they do remember their dad being strict when they were younger. I mean, they said that yes, occasionally he would spank them, but there was absolutely nothing to the extent of what he did to Malinda. They never saw that side of their father. So it just begs the question, what happened? What changed? And my guess is Cindy. My guess is Rendell is just this weak, loser piece of crap, that he had this woman who is probably a narcissist, obviously an abuser, calculated, no empathy, like just scum monster, and she was driving the ship, just like she did with her ex and Jessica, even with Isaiah, and then now with Malinda. And I think he was such a weak piece of garbage. I don't even want to call him a father, truly, I don't, that he wouldn't stand up to Cindy. And he just allowed it all to happen. And then he even started partaking in it, which, what a waste of life. Sorry. I just got carried away there. But honestly, like, that's how I feel. Like, what a waste of life. Like, he does not deserve to live, in my opinion. Truly, he does not. And I'm sure more details about this case will be revealed as time goes on. But for now, Malinda's sisters, Emily, Abby, and Jamie, they are actively working to ensure that something like this never happens again. They've even started a Facebook group called Justice for Malinda, which you can all go follow and support. They're also calling for a change in legislation. Specifically, they want a database to be created that tracks physical offenders. It would be much like the sex registry, and it would notify counties and other people in the area when somebody who has committed child harm moves into that area. And I think that is such a great idea.
This is video and photos from a memorial service for the 12-year-old held yesterday. Prosecutors say Malinda, a Chester County child, was tortured and starved to death. Lawmakers say that they have been pressing to develop a statewide database on those convicted of child abuse. They have passed legislation, but there have been delays.
Just today, the state responding to our inquiries, say a new system allowing for case management coordination and enhanced decision making both at the state level and between county and children and youth agencies may be online by next year.
Malinda Hoagland's half-sisters want change and reform. They want improved communication between child protective services in each and every one of Pennsylvania's 67 counties.
I think there was a lot of failure on a lot of different levels from outside of the home.
Unfortunately, sources and attorneys for the family say there were additional missed warning signs, including this 2020 custody order, which severely restricted Cindy Warren's contact with Malinda, as well as notification from the Coatesville School District to Chester County Children, Youth, and Families about welfare concerns. Plus, statements Rendell Hoagland allegedly made to police that CYF contacted him by phone only and never came to the house.
I am sort of in a disbelief that there's no database for prior, what I would call predators to register.
But in 2014, Pennsylvania lawmakers passed measures calling for the implementation of a statewide child database. But 10 years after the fact, it has yet to come online. We asked the State Department of Human Services for an update.
To hear also that there had been a history of abuse from Ms. Warren, and that troubling that the systems failed her and that the adults failed her. And, hopefully we can find legislative solutions to work on that.
House Bill 321 sponsor, Representative Craig Statz, didn't respond to multiple requests for an interview, but wrote, "Getting this system online will give Pennsylvania a central database for all 67 counties to use, providing up-to-date information on those who have been victims of or who have been convicted of child abuse, so that we can protect the victims and punish the abusers."
It's important that we get that system launched because it would allow for the different county offices to coordinate with each other. That was one theme that you've seen between these two cases, the Packer case almost 10 years ago, and this case with Ms. Malinda Hoagland, that there were red flags, or there were cases of abuse in other counties that did not follow the perpetrators of abuse and weren't acknowledged in other counties, or were missed or overlooked.
Malinda and her family lived in State Representative Dan Williams' district.
You've got real bipartisan agreement in terms of connecting 67 counties communicatively so that these kinds of things don't happen or don't continue to happen, or at least place a barrier of protection around children so that it doesn't happen as frequently.
At an event on Monday, we caught up with Governor Josh Shapiro and asked him about the Hoagland investigation.
We need to have a system in Pennsylvania that allows counties to talk to one another and share information. And that's exactly what we are building in our administration and what we're working on with lawmakers who want to see the laws change.
The main thing we're looking for is change.
Attorneys Alexandria Crothamel and Tom Bosworth represent Malinda Hoagland's estate as well as her half-sisters. They say they've been in touch with Governor Shapiro's office about reform.
We're trying to get a law passed for some kind of database or register or some kind of alert system for physical abuse. We will never bring that little girl back, and we can never undo all the suffering that she went through. But we can try to get peace for this family and change, and that's really what they want.
Malinda's family wants Child Protective Service workers to have broader access to determine if someone has a history of child abuse.
There's no way that they should be able to jump from county to county or from state to state and that not follow you.
Do you believe there were failures here at multiple levels?
Multiple.
This
Yes.
should never have happened.
They also hired 2 attorneys to champion their case. And in August of 2024, they filed a multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit against the state, the county, and the school agencies involved.
Attorneys say this is about holding agencies accountable for not protecting 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland.
Numerous governmental agencies, the counties and institutions that knew that Malinda was being abused and turned a blind eye essentially over and over again and never intervened.
The complaint was filed against a long list of defendants, including Chester County Children, Youth and Families, school districts, and individual schools. The lawsuit alleges wrongful death, negligence, recklessness, and other charges.
The county of Chester was repeatedly notified by educators that Malinda was being physically abused. Black eyes, injuries, suspected physical abuse was reported in black and white. Not one time did county officials go visit the home.
Attorneys say they hope the lawsuit will also bring about major reform.
We need enforcement. We need some governmental agency or the governor or somebody to step in and say this is unacceptable.
A CBS News investigation revealed that Malinda Hoagland's father's girlfriend, Cindy Warren, was convicted of child endangerment years ago.
What they want is a registry, similar to Megan's Law. They want a registry for physical offenders.
Now, in addition to holding agencies accountable, the sisters also want to create a foundation to get children the help they need who maybe have been facing similar abuse. We only hope some good can come out of this.
Like Malinda's sisters said, this never should have happened. If the state knew that Rendell was dating somebody who had a past of child harm, which clearly he knew because it was mentioned in the custody agreement, then they should have had somebody doing checks on Malinda to ensure that the custody agreement was being followed and that she was okay. But they didn't do that. So should there be some type of registry like that? Why not? It makes complete sense to me. I think that that is something that we should all advocate for. Who else is going to protect these children if their own parents don't? Right? And I really encourage you guys to follow the Facebook group Justice for Malinda and help spread Malinda's story. That is what her family wants in this. That is their goal. And a very special thanks to Allie Crofhamel and Tom Bosworth, the attorneys for Malinda's sisters and estate, because they are holding authorities accountable. They are generating awareness about Malinda's case, and they are pushing for legislation and change around those issues. They also put us in touch with Emily and Jamie, Malinda's half-sisters, who were so generous with their time and gave us a very special insight into Malinda's life and into her personality, the way that only close, caring family members can do. So to Emily and Jamie, thank you for speaking with us. Our hearts are with you, as I know so many of the viewers are as well. We support you, we are here for you, and we want to help you in any way that we can. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of 10 to Life. I will keep you updated on this case. Again, follow the Facebook group to follow along more, share Malinda's story, and let's really hope that change can happen soon for every child's sake. Until the next one, stay safe. Bye.